Hey everybody, it's Cindy, and again, it's been a while since my last episode. Um, but a lot of stuff's going on, and I think that's the case with everybody. Um, I have something specific I want to talk to you about today, but there's a couple of other little things that connect. This week, every time, like I say, every time you turn the news on, is it's like, wow, okay, something else is going on, and you know, and I'm not talking about the political stuff because that's just crazy. I can't figure half that stuff out. But I saw where like Ozzy Osbourne passed away, and to be honest with you, I'm amazed that he lived as long as he did. But I guess that's not nice. But and then a couple of other people that were a part of my not so much childhood but teenagehood and young adulthood. Uh, as far as TV personalities and things like that. Um, and then Hulk Hogan passed away. And what's so interesting about these two characters is you have Ozzy Osbourne on one end of the spectrum where he is known as Prince of Darkness, because of the heavy metal music and his personality. Um, and then you have somebody like Hulk Hogan who was just very boisterous and um, he was wrestling and all that. Um, but about a year and a half ago, he was baptized. He gave his life to the Lord, and um, and then he became a big time Trumper. Um, and he, if you saw the inauguration, he was making a spectacle of himself, and I'm like, oh man, that guy is like 70 years old, and he's running circles around me. But you know, but I guess his heart gave out, and but he's had a pretty amazing life. At 71 years old, and he touched a lot of people as far as doing stuff for uh, foundations and raising money and giving giving a lot of encouragement to vets and to Trump and to just a lot of other people. Uh, Ozzy, he was a different sort, but we I don't think we can really judge. We just know what we see on TV, and that's when you're watching somebody on TV, that's a personality. That's a mask. That's something that they're using to get their funds, and they gotta pay for those nice $1 million homes and cars and such and so forth. But I just thought it was interesting that you have somebody from one extreme like Ozzy to the next extreme like Hulk, and they both leave this world in the same week. And I just started thinking about some issues that I had in my past where I came close. Um, especially turning 63 this year. Uh, I oh, if you haven't noticed, I don't have any music because I don't have any internet, and therefore I can't stream any music. And so you're going to hear my dogs rumbling around in the path. Oops, here he is. Um, and it just kind of makes you think about your own mortality. Uh, all the different things that are going on in the world around us, and the we turn on the news and we see all this chaos and sadness. But there's a lot of joy out there too, and I have to admit that I have days where I do my doom scrolling and it just makes me sad, and then I go and I look at cute puppies and things on my computer, and then I'm like, okay, I feel better now. But and then again, I look at some things regarding scripture, and that's very encouraging as well. And that's what I want to share with you. I want to share with you not so much something. well, maybe encouraging. I hope encouraging. Uh, some stories about my close calls. I told you about when I lost my spleen, and the doctors pretty much told my parents, this might be it, and make arrangements. And um, I kind of allude to the fact that I felt like God told me it wasn't time for me to go. And I felt like I could share the story just a little bit more than last week. Um, okay, so what it was I was in the hospital, had all these tests, and I was in severe pain, so much pain. And I was to the point where I was just like, okay, God, if you decide to take me now, I'm okay with that. I'm I hurt so bad. And that's why I try to never judge people who are going through something, because I remember a little bit about what that was like. Um, but it, but here I am, 16 years old, and I'm just like, yeah, it's time. I'm done. And then I was under a lot of medications and things like that, and I fell asleep. Finally, I was able to get some sleep, and in my dream, I was dreaming about. And what's so funny is, okay, we never had a fireplace, but I dreamed that there was a fireplace, and that there was this whole area of tribute to me, where pictures of me and all these different photos and paintings and just basically uh, just this whole area dedicated to my memory. And I realized in this vision I was gone, and I could see my brother, and I could see my parents both crying, and at the fireplace when at the the little tribute, and just crying, and I could see my brother in the dream. I could see him kind of in the back corner, looking like he was being left out, like he was alone. And and then when I woke up, I said, "This. I think this is a sign that it's not that I can't leave my brother. I can't leave him. Um, this it wouldn't be fair, in my mind." I said, "So, I guess this means I gotta live." And when I woke up, I found out that I was going to have surgery. And of course, they didn't know what they were looking. They didn't know what they were doing the surgery for. They knew they had to go in and figure this out, because I was slowly but surely slipping away. And they told me this is going to be exploration, and we don't know, but we're going to do our best to help you. And I'm like, okay. I just knew I had to trust them. And I woke up a couple days later and found out, yep, your spleen blew up, and you had 3 liters of old blood floating around in there, and we don't know why. And then they found out it was a cyst in the spleen, and and I was like, okay, I was like, okay, now the next thing is going to be healing and getting better. So that was a trial, but I got through it. Um, and I'm not ready to share my story about when I lost my vision again at 21, but I did want to share something about another close call that I had when I was working, and I was doing volunteer work with Awana, and I was working with kids, and I love working with the kids, and I love teaching, but I was starting to feel kind of yucky. But that's one of the things about not having a spleen. When certain things start coming, you can be sick and just not be doing well, because your body's just having to fight harder, and it takes a lot out of you. So I just figured it was like just one of those episodes with my spleen. And this is before I got diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And so I'm trying to remember the story. So Danny was working, and I had been at WANA and did my volunteer work, and I just was not feeling well, but I was doing my best. Got home, Danny was at work. It was night, He was working nights, and I had gone to the bathroom and came out, and I won't go too gross into the detail, but it was nasty. Let's just put it that way. And I and I assume it was, I wasn't looking at the clock, so I can't tell you times and things like that. But I woke up and I was on the floor. And, all I knew was I want to get to my bed. That's all I knew. And um, so I didn't realize I had thrown up blood. And so I got into bed. And then Danny gets home, early the next morning. And he's like, "What's going on?" And I was just like, "I just haven't been feeling good." And I went to the restroom again, and then I couldn't get up. And so I had to call him, embarrassing enough. I'm in the bathroom, and the part that's so disturbing to him was he was also a volunteer at the fire department, and there were some times that he's had to go get people after they're gone, and a lot of times there'll be somebody in the bathroom, and so I'm calling to him, and he comes to get me, and there was two times that something this happened, but the first time I think he was dragging me out, and I passed out, and so he calls to the kids because they're still young and at home. He calls the kids, and is telling them he's going to have to take me to the emergency room and all this stuff, and he's yelling at me, trying to wake me up, just because that's what you do. You don't let the person slip away. So he gets me into the car. He didn't call the ambulance the first time. He gets me into the car, gets me to the emergency room, and they're asking me questions, and then they're like, "Well, have you thrown up blood?" I'm like, "I don't know. I have no idea. All I know is I woke up and I was on the floor, and but I just want to get in bed." And Danny's like, "Well, why didn't you call? Why didn't you say something?" And all I knew is I want to get to bed. And when you're that sick, you don't think clearly. I mean, obviously. And so so they get me in to check in, and so they're like, okay, they're asking me questions. I'm in a wheelchair, and I'm slipping, and they're like, "Okay, you gotta sit up." And I'm like, I can't. I'm so weak, and then they get me checked in, and they take me into the room to kind of check me out, and then I just start going, and it's black, and they said, "Okay, have you thrown it before?" And I'm like, "Yeah, but I don't know what it was." And so they assumed it was an ulcer, but of course they didn't know for sure. And I think that's my uh, thing saying that I have internet now. Looks like I have internet now, but anyway. Um, so they have me on the cot, and I have all these nurses, and they're getting me, prepared for the doctor to look at me, and so they're putting in IVs, and I was just so bad off. So they getting an IV in one arm, and they're bringing me blood, but the part that was so scary to them was they bring me the blood, and then they're trying to get it all hooked up, and then the bag burst open, so there was blood everywhere, and I'm laying there, and I'm half conscious, and I hear the commotion going on. I'm kind of laughing because I'm like, of course, only me. And then Danny was in the room. They let him be in the room, but he was up against the wall and trying to stay out of everybody's way, and they're panicking, and because they're trying to. I don't have any veins to put blood in it, and they're trying to get me hooked up, and so they have to get another bag, and they're having to clean up the blood. And the doctor comes in, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll come back, because he sees all the blood. He knows it's not my blood. He knows. He figured it would happen, I'm sure. And he's like, okay, when you get this cleaned up, I'll be back. And so they get me hooked up, and they're pushing the bags. They're trying to push the blood into me because they realize I've lost a lot of blood. And then somebody, I don't know who, I don't know if it was a doctor or one of the nurses or what, they're asking me, did I want a preacher or priest or something? And yep, there's internet. And um, I and I said, yeah, go ahead. But I wasn't thinking about for me. Um, I was like, in case something happens, there'd be somebody there with Danny because the kids are home because they're old enough to be home by themselves, and of course they have no clues what's going on. They have an idea, but they don't really know what's going on. And I think he called mom and kind of told her, keep a lookout on for the kids. And so, but I was just wanting somebody to be with him in case something happened, because it was pretty precarious. I was just like, the nurses are giving me the feeling like this isn't good. And of course, anytime you have ulcers is just not a good thing, and you're so weak, and you're so tired, and you don't really think straight. But I could hear everything going on, and there was a couple times where they were talking to me, but I couldn't respond. And that's the thing too, is like, just because you're talking to somebody and they don't respond, it doesn't mean they don't hear you. They just can't respond for one reason or another. And so they finally get enough blood in me where I can kind of like answer some of the questions. And because Danny doesn't know anything, he was at work all night. So the doctor comes in, and I'm kind of updating him on what I can. And he's like, yeah, we're going to have to run some tests, but, all the indications are ulcer. I'm like, okay, I've never had that. That was the first time I ever had that. I've always had stomach issues since childhood, but never bleeding ulcer. Um, and so I do get through this, and it takes me a while to get back into a kind of sort of a healthy state. I get back home, I'm back to work, I'm back to doing Awana, so I'm doing good. And something interesting happened whenever I was teaching high school, and for some reason the kids were talking about um, they were talking about something that they were doing with being silly, being teenagers, and one of the teachers had fussed at them and told them they shouldn't be doing certain things because it didn't reflect well on the school, and that they don't know better. They're kids, and they shouldn't be doing this, and they just need to listen to us adults and do what we tell them. And so they were lecturing the kids. And so because I taught computer, and I'm like, okay, as long as you do your assignments, you can all chit chat, a little bit, as long as you're doing your work. So I give them an assignment, and they were complaining about one of the teachers. And I always have to be kind of careful because sometimes I didn't agree with the teachers, but I couldn't necessarily say anything against them. Um, but so they were complaining about this particular situation, and basically saying, "Hey, it's none of their business what we do anyway." And they were asking me. It was like, "Well, what do you think? You were a kid. You did stuff. You sowed your oats, or however you want to phrase that." And I thought about it carefully, and I said, I am not going to sit there and tell you something's okay when I know it's not. Because if I don't want a millstone around my neck. And of course, some of them were Christian. They kind of understood what I was saying. I said, if I tell you something that's harmful to you, or give you the okay, that's okay to do something harmful because you're a kid, what if something happens? And they were like, well, you did this when you were a kid, and you probably did this. And I'm like, well, I wasn't doing the stuff that they were talking about, but I understood what they were saying. And I said, yeah, but maybe, but we do not have guarantee of tomorrow. I'm not going to sit there and say something's okay and then something happened to you. That is going to be on me. That's going to be something that I have to deal with. That's going to have to be something I live with. And I'm going to be having to, when I meet my maker, I'm going to have to explain myself to him why I didn't lead you in the direction you were supposed to go. And they said, well, you're not responsible for us. This is what we decide. I said, yes, but if I okay it, then I have placed that millstone purposely around my neck, and I am now responsible for teaching you wrong. I said, that's the thing. I've taken on the responsibility as a teacher to point you in the right direction, to teach scripture. Even though I was just a computer teacher, I was still a Christian teacher. And then, one of the things I always tell the kids too is like, I might be a teacher from 9 to 3, but I'm a Christian 24/7. I'm always going to be praying about these kids and praying that I'm leading them correctly, and that I'm being a good example to them, and that I'm, sharing scripture when I can, or when the opportunity arises. But that was the point I was trying to make to them was, we just don't know when our day is going to come. And and I also knew that they had some friends who were in a car accident who passed away not too long before that. And I'm like, okay, how many of y'all know somebody that died? That's 15, 16 years old. And they knew that I knew. And they said, well, yeah, but I said, exactly. I said, we don't know. There is no guarantee of tomorrow. And I says, but let me tell you something. I said, when I was in the hospital and I had the ulcer, most of them knew about it. When I was in the hospital, I could have died. And I said, I laid there knowing that this might be it. I said, but you know what? I wasn't afraid. I didn't have the fear in me of not knowing when I left this earth where I would go. And I said, I had the knowledge of knowing that I'm a child of God, and that I've been doing everything I can to live my life a certain way. And I've messed up, but, I know I'm going to be accountable for several things, but I have definitely given my life to the Lord, and I definitely believe, and I definitely know that he wants me to be with him. And that's the difference between living your life precariously and going day to day thinking that you always have tomorrow to ask for forgiveness. That says we can't bargain with God, and we can't assume that we're going to be around to ask God to forgive us at a later date. That's not how Scripture works. And I know there's Scripture that talks about that, and I can't bring it to mind right now, but I know it's there. And it's one of those things where the older I get, the time is coming closer, and I don't know when. And I think that, but it does. Your age has nothing to do with it. It's hard to think of it, but we have children who don't make it. I mean, we saw that with Texas, and but we have people who live to 100. Or over 100. So we don't know, and but I'm not going to gamble with my spiritual life. I want to be able to live my life in the knowledge of I'm his. I'm his child, and I'm going to be with him. And and everything else is just gravy. I'm going to leave this world knowing that I'm going to be able to walk again, and I'm going to be able to see, 2020, or probably even better than that. And and it's just this such a good feeling knowing that I have that hope, and I think that's one of my responsibilities as a Christian, is to share that hope with other people. So I hope that and I hope that you have that same hope. I hope that you have that knowledge of His love for you, and if you're in a situation where you have family members who don't have that same hope, or you don't think they have that same hope, you can't beat their head. You can't beat them over the head with the Bible. Is what I'm trying to say. Ooh. That actually just turns them away, for sure. All you can do is live your life with that knowledge. My baby. Live your life in that knowledge. Be a reflection. You are known by your fruit. You are known by your walk, and they will see that walk. But there's going to be those who don't, and you can't sit there and just chastise them and bully them into living their life for God. They cannot have your spiritual life. That's not spiritual. Your spiritual life is not genetic. And I've seen where some parents have been like the best Christians, and their kids are just woo. And then I've seen some situations where the parents were woo, and the kids were like, "I love Jesus." Excuse me. So I want to just kind of remind you that that's who we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be a light. We can plant the seed, and we can be a light, but there might be somebody else who's watering that plant. We or that seed. We don't know. I mean, we know what our responsibility is in the kingdom, and but we cannot force their salvation. That's not us. That we don't have that ability. God is the only one who can do that, and He can do that. But the person who you're praying for, they have to take that step. That has to be them. You can share the gospel, but I mean, how's the saying go? And you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. You and you can continue praying. I had a kid one time who had told me that his stepfather told him he wasn't allowed to associate with his father anymore because his lifestyle was questionable. And he's like, "I'm not allowed to talk to my father." And I'm like, okay. And I can't say anything against the parents as a teacher. I can't go against what the parents say, even though I may not agree with them. And the kid was like, "Well, what do I do?" And I said, "Well, you're going to get to an age where you can make that decision yourself, and you're going to have legal rights to continue your relationship with your father." I said, "But in the meantime, even though your real father is not saved, and that he is not living his life the way that he should," I said, "Guess what? You can pray." And that is one of those things that God gives us the ability to ask and to be earnest in prayer and say, this person needs you, God. Please send somebody to him that will help get him in the right way. And I've seen it happen. Um, and, and it's a beautiful thing, but then I've seen some people who are just determined to not, to not find, ask God to be a part of their life for one reason or another, and that's something that I respect. I might not be happy about it, but I respect it because it's their life, and um, and I can share my stories and why I am the way I am, but I can't sit there and say, okay, no, because of what I told you, you have to be a Christian. No, that's not how it works. But anyway, this is a hard one. We when we love certain people, we want them to be with us, in the end, and we cry for them, and we some people are on their knees every day, um, for certain family members, and keep doing that. Don't give up, but don't take it so personally that you think that you failed. Because again, that's not on you. Uh, that's that's all about them, and all about their relationship with the Lord. So I hope, I don't know if I made any sense, guys. It's been a muddled week. I have been kind of struggling with my health this week. Um, I don't know if it's an allergy or what, but I've had some reactions with medications, I think, and I've just been kind of dealing with that. I'm okay, but I've just been kind of muddling through. I've been doing what they call, what is it, or bed rotting, where I'm just in bed watching videos and watching TV and doom scrolling and watching puppy videos, and then if you've seen where I have the raccoons and deer that come in my yard, at night, and we leave food out for them. Uh, it's like, my own little wall kingdom back there, and it gives me a little joy to be able to watch that and knowing it's like 20 feet away from me. So I'm good. Uh, and I'm going to start back to teaching my interpretive movement stuff in a couple of weeks, and I'm looking forward to that. I'm already having to think about Christmas and getting ready to have my kids perform for Christmas. Probably something for that as well. So I'm looking forward to that. So I've got some good things, and I didn't get to go to church last Sunday because I wasn't feeling well. But hopefully this Sunday I'll get to go. And so if y'all want to pray for me, just pray that I'm going to feel good and be able to enjoy, being with my congregation, and, be able to see everybody and just get a little boost. I need a boost. I share my stories with you, but every once in a while, this little Energizer bunny needs to change your batteries once in a while. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, so hopefully I didn't confuse it all and make y'all kind of wonder what was going on with me. But I just felt like I kind of want to hopefully encourage y'all to, keep fighting the good fight. This is an uphill battle, and there's going to be a day where we're going to find the joy of the Lord in eternity, and it's just one of those things that we can look forward to as Christians, and but in the meantime, we're still on this earth. We're not living on a mountain. I don't think any of us are. And we're not hermits. We're in this world, and we're going to see things that hurt. things that make us sad. But just know there are people out there who do love you, who do care, who want the best for you, and let them know when you're going through stuff. Let them know you're going through stuff. We're supposed to take care of each other, and I hope I took care of some of y'all today by encouraging y'all. So again, um, be a blessing and be blessed. Um, and you are loved. And as soon as my internet comes back and stays back, I'll be hooking y'all up, and hopefully I'll get to talk to y'all again in a couple of days.